Canon released firmware 1.8.1 last week for the Canon EOS R5, but despite getting some new capabilities and bug fixes, customers, well, they weren't too happy with this update and were quite vocal with their dissatisfaction with the many comments that I saw in that video. Customers were expecting the biggest firmware update to come out since the R5 itself. Well, I'm happy to report here early Monday morning that, well, rumors of a much bigger firmware update, firmware 2.0 shall we call it, wasn't wrong, just the timing. We've got more information on the next couple of firmware updates coming out, their timing, all that after this short break. But first, please do me a favor, follow me on Twitter, subscribe, share, choose all notifications, like, comment, and all that good stuff. It means an awful lot to me, it's greatly appreciated, but most importantly, it really helps this channel grow. The Canon EOS R5 anticipated big firmware update is beginning to take on a news cycle of its own. It's building in, it's like a snowball traveling downhill. It keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it hits something and completely destroys itself. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Canon EOS R5 is going to immolate, self-implode, or destroy itself with a firmware update. It's just the anticipation around that big firmware update. It started last month with getting a rumor of a big firmware update coming to the Canon EOS R5, the biggest firmware update that we've ever seen coming to the R5. And I, like you, got really excited about this. What could we possibly see in the big firmware update? Now, obviously, getting that 30-minute record limit removed is one of them, and that's something that Canon rumors speculated about. But we also heard about many other capabilities that we could see in this firmware update, from pixel shift, 400 megapixel pixel shift, to pre-buffer shooting, focus breathing compensation, improvements to the autofocus system, but really getting back to that 30-minute record limit. But that's one of the items that I thought that, yeah, I don't know about this. Removing that 30-minute record limit? Well, Canon has removed that 30-minute record limit. They've done so by releasing a new camera. The R3, the R10, the R7, the R8, the R50, the R6 Mark II. And while some of those cameras do have limits, they're related to overheating, not that arbitrary 30-minute record limit. And we're not going to get into the history of it, but suffice it to say, it's no longer needed. So last week, with all the anticipation building, we finally get a firmware update released, 1.8.1, not even 1.8.0, we get 1.8.1, and we get pixel shift, and we get a few minor, well, bug fixes, as we normally do with firmware updates. But the response was terrible. People were really upset. And if you go back to the video where I covered this one right here, just look at all the comments down below. People were very upset with this. People were disappointed with Canon. They were saying that customers should be embarrassed and disappointed. And I was really surprised by this because Canon didn't make any promises about a firmware update. They didn't make any promises about what capabilities would come out. And they didn't even mention anything about pixel shift. The only thing we got from Canon about pixel shift was a few days before on the weekend, where Canon Europe accidentally put out this image here indicating that pixel shift was on its way. Now, of course, I did apply that firmware update 1.8.1, got pixel shift, and took it out on the weekend and did a couple of test shots. I didn't spend an awful lot of time with it. It was a little bit windy, it was a little bit cold, but I did take some photos. And what I saw was impressive. 260 plus megabyte files, and some of them going up to 270 megabyte files. That's huge. And those are just JPEG images. Compare that to the regular or standard JPEG image of around 25 or 23 megabytes. And you'd think that, wow, these must definitely have about 400 megabytes worth of information. And it certainly had an awful lot of data inside the file, but in terms of, well, the extra sharpness, I can understand why a lot of people were disappointed. Now, I want to set the scene here. When I was out shooting, I did one example where I chose a tree because obviously, well, trees aren't fast moving. There should be less issues with anything moving in the scene. So the tree, as you can see right here, takes up most of the frame. And what you're seeing right here is a JPEG image, that 23.7 megabyte file. Notice the level of detail? Now let's take a look at the pixel shift image, that's 263 megabytes. We're zoomed in at the same level of magnification. You can notice a little bit of sharpness, but the sharpness isn't huge, not what you'd expect from what is essentially over 10 times the amount of information. And you might be wondering, well, did I have a tripod? Was I shooting handheld? Well, I was definitely using a tripod. I was using the Manfrotto 504X with aluminum tripod. It's a rather expensive tripod costing north of $1,000, and it's very rock steady. It's what I use whenever I'm shooting outside in all sorts of conditions, whether it's windy or not, and it did a really good job of holding things steady. And I just ever so lightly held down that shutter button to start things off, and I think that could have potentially impacted things a little bit. If I'd used some sort of remote, which is what I should have done, we might see a little bit more sharpness here, but still I wasn't overly impressed. And in this image here, you can see what happens when it tries to deal with moving subjects in the frame. Yeah, it definitely leaves artifacts. It's nowhere on par with what Sony was able to do with the A7 R5. Canon Rumors, sensing the displeasure, says that the initial impressions of this feature weren't positive at all, but may get better over time. But what will get better over time? Our impressions of this feature, or actually the feature itself in future firmware updates, I definitely do hope it gets better. It's nice to see this feature in a Canon camera, but as I said when Panasonic came out with it and when other companies came out with it, pixel shift to me is largely a gimmick. Unless things are absolutely rock steady, unless you've got the perfect tripod, you're in the perfect environment, there's no wind, there's no movement amongst trees, as I shot, no movement amongst the leaves, the branches, or even the grass, then yeah, you might get a really good stable image. It wasn't until Sony came out with the A7 R5 that we saw that, well, their pixel shift implementation could work very well, even if we had subjects moving in the screen or in the frame, and they used a truck, a vehicle, and it produced really good results. But others, including Canon here, it's largely a gimmick. Having subjects moving in the frame, and it doesn't do a very good job. So with all the anticipation of a big firmware update coming, and then getting pixel shift, which isn't that great of an implementation, people were, well, soured an awful lot. And I didn't really think that sourness was, well placed. I mean, after all, Canon did provide us a new firmware update to the Canon EOS R5, a camera that's almost 3 years old, and I gave Canon a lot of credit for that. Thank you, Canon, for keeping this camera current, keep delivering new firmware updates. And according to Canon Rumors, this isn't the last firmware update coming to the Canon EOS R5. Canon Rumors tells us that something big is on the way, that 1.8.1 isn't the biggest update we should expect. We have been told that further firmware updates are coming. It was suggested that there will be 2 more feature updates for the Canon EOS R5 before the end of 2023, with the final version being 2.0. So there you have it, at least 2 more firmware updates coming out for the Canon EOS R5 before the end of the year, and one of them being a big firmware update at 2.0. What will we see in that firmware update? Well, if we go back to what Canon Rumors was suggesting we could see in that big firmware update coming, well, nothing has changed in this update from Canon Rumors. So we were hearing about a pre-shooting buffer, focus breathing compensation, and various updates to the autofocus system ranging from more accurate focusing on, well, bikes, motorcycles, cars, trains, and that sort of stuff, to being able to detect more subjects, maybe more insects and animals. And that would definitely be a big boon. But what many people, at least not photographers, but videographers, have been really hoping for is the lifting, that removal of that 30-minute record limit that we got back in July of 2020. I'm really hoping to see the removal of that limitation, but I'm not overly confident. Despite Canon Rumors saying that we might get that lifted, I've heard this so many times since July of 2020. At first on an AV Pro interview with a Canon technical representative telling us that yes, it's going to be going from all Canon cameras or going in the future. And yes, that's certainly proven to be true. We have seen the removal, that lifting of that 30-minute record limit, but it's been in a new camera such as the R10, the R8, the R7, the R50, the R6 Mark II, and I can go on. And while some cameras do have certain limitations in terms of time, it's not based on some sort of arbitrary time limit, but more of, well, to avoid overheating. But the purpose of today's post from Canon Rumors is to let us know that that big update that we were expecting, that we were anticipating, isn't done for. It's not fizzled away, just disappeared like smoke into the air. It is on its way. We are getting a big firmware update. We're getting multiple firmware updates this year, and it doesn't mean to say that that next firmware update, be it 1.9, is going to be our big major update. It's that we are getting a 2.0. And I know what some of you are thinking, yes, well, after 1.9 is obviously 2.0. Well, no, that's not how, well, version numbers work with software. Just look at Apple. And I know this for myself working in various software development houses. The first number in a version update, like a 1 or in 1.8.1, denotes a major version. The next number, separated by a decimal, doesn't mean we're dealing with real numbers or integer type numbers. It means the level, the update to that one. So an update 1.8 is a minor update, as is 1.7, 1.6, 1.5. And you can go to 1.9 and then 1.10, 1.11, 1. You can go to 1.108.1.2. Just look at the Canon EOS R5C 1.0.3.1. The number that changes, the further it is in, the less likely you're going to get any major updates. But if you change that first number, that really denotes a major update. So I am looking forward to seeing a major update on the Canon EOS R5, but as we get closer to the end of the year, that's when I expect rumors, I expect an announcement of the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. And based on what we know from Canon, the R5 or the 5 series camera is normally refreshed every 3 to 4 years, although it was 5 years with the Canon EOS R5 due to various market forces. So with the R5 coming out in July 2020, that will put July 2024 as the expected time range, or anywhere between now and July 2024. And rumors have been telling me that sometime towards the end of this year is when we can expect an announcement, with the camera being delivered sometime early in 2024. We'll just have to wait and see if that's the case. So if you want to stay up to date on all the latest camera news and rumors, specifically what firmware update we're getting for the Canon EOS R5, or when we're getting the R5 Mark II, then go ahead and subscribe, but make sure you choose all notifications. The reason why you want to do that is so that way, as soon as I publish a new video like this one here, you'll get notified, so that way you can stay up to date on all the latest news and rumors. But make sure you check your spam and junk mail folder, because sometimes these messages get trapped in there. You will also get notified when you go into YouTube at that bell icon up at the top. Any new videos that come out, they'll be mentioned there as well. And for all the minor news and rumors that aren't big enough to have their own separate video, well then go ahead and follow me on Twitter at this address here. Sometimes I publish as many as 10 tweets a day. It really depends on the news cycle as to what's going on. And also if I see a major deal on for the Canon EOS R5, like right now, it's $200 off. So I have links down below for Adorama and B&H. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.